welcome everybody to Four Seasons on Saturday, 2024. And this is the first session of our review of the box set, talking about the box set bonus tracks. And today we're going to talk about the Vee-Jay discs with George Perez, Chuck Walker, and Anthony Colatrella, our usual team of enthusiastic fans who are enjoying and going to give us commentary on their thoughts on the box set bonus tracks as they've come out from, first of all, in this session, the Vee-Jay tracks. So, starting talking about the Sherry album and the source of that, there weren't very good tape versions in the Four Seasons Partnership archive of those albums, early albums at Vee-Jay. And at one stage, Bill England had to reconstruct and restore the Sherry album for issue in past masters that have been issued in the 1980s. But we managed to recommend that the Vee-Jay reels be used as the best quality masters that exist. And as master track advisor, I suggested that they be used. But the question is, how do they sound, guys? How does Sherry sound? Does it come out well?
Yeah, I thought so. These were the delivery tapes from Vee-Jay.
Yeah, I recommended they use the delivery tapes, but I can't say whether they have or not, except that the quality of the discs that you've got doesn't seem to be as high as the Vee-Jay reels quality.
What other?
It's only marginal, and most listeners would not notice it.
Yeah, it sounds great to me. Well, if they didn't use if the snapper didn't use the delivery tapes, what else could they have used?
They would have used a safety copy. There were three copies. There were basically three copies of the Sherry album. One was a reconstruct, and that reconstruct was done from the Vee-Jay reels. But the two other safety copies were poorer quality and obviously not good enough to use. They didn't have a full spectrum of sound, so it was pretty diminished. But the great thing is that, and I'll say this now about all of the bonus tracks we're going to talk about, I cannot fault in any shape or form the quality of the bonus tracks that have gone into the box set. They're all tremendously mastered.
Yeah.
Particularly given the sources of them. And we'll kick off with the first one, which on the Sherry album, and all these bonus tracks were put together to fill up the CDs with the space that was available after the mono album and the stereo album had been put on them. So we had Trance by the Four Seasons, which was one of four tracks that we found in Tommy DeVito's archive. And wow. I supplied those from Rex Woodard's original tapes way back in 1990 when he got them from Tommy.
Yeah, so the only thing you have to compare for Trance is the version that is on the CD compilation, the early years, the Four Seasons.
Fantastic years, yeah. That Stephen Wright did that.
Right, and
personal collection, but they're all studio. All he did was he studio dubbed all of the Four Lovers. The Four Lovers tracks come from original master tapes, but the early Fantastic Years come from original vinyl.
Yeah,
and are all dubbed in the studio.
Yeah, well, when you compare it to that and realizing that this came from a cassette from Tommy's archive, I thought they did an amazing job. I thought it sounded great, and it's really sounds entirely different than that. Than the early years version. You can hear there's this great bass intro, and then the background vocals are very clear, and Frankie's voice comes across very clear. And then to me, they eliminated the bird sound effects. I know George likes that, but I thought it was.
I happen to like those effects.
Yeah.
When they were being backup singers for crew, Valley's voice was so diverse that they used it on a lot of things like those bird drops or
highs
and lows and other recordings.
He was very good with the caws.
Yes. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it.
But the original source of the Four Seasons harmony sound that we know so well and comes out clearly on the ballads on the first on all the Vee-Jay albums and would subsequently carry on to Phillips is this harmony of Frankie's voice with the other three seasons. And we know that Charlie Calello's described it as open harmony, which is really the source of their sound, and that's why we included these 4 pre-seasons tracks. And Trance was the first one to go into this set of bonus tracks. And then obviously we had to move on then. Well, we could have put them all together, but we thought breaking them up was a good idea. But we had to put in Bermuda and Spanish Lace. And we used the Bob Fisher archive because he had been responsible for getting those masters from the original tape archive for the Gone and West Side release
Right.
of
Yeah.
and there are 5 versions of those 2 songs, 3 of Spanish Lace, mono stereo and an alternative take, and 2 mono and stereo of Bermuda. And
yeah, when I compared these sounded like the mono, the 45 mono versions. They sounded very similar to me anyway.
Yeah, well, we couldn't put them all in. So the decision was made to go for the mono, but I think one of them may have gone in as a stereo version. But I've got them all in the library archive that we're building of all the Four Seasons Best Masters. So they are preserved. Yeah, the story of I've Cried Before on this is a bit confused for me because I'd provided the mono 45 version because it wasn't in the Four Seasons tape archive, didn't exist. I'd provided also a new sync stereo done with digital extraction, which allowed us to put the mono 45 of Frankie and the Four Seasons with the stereo musical track. And that was the sync version. They should have gone in there. But, you know, what's gone in there doesn't satisfy me as the original master track advisor, but that was down to Snapper and their management
Well,
whole process.
the one in the box set, the Frankie's lead vocal sounds to me the same as the version, the flip side of Sherry, that version, but the background is different.
Yeah.
The instrument background sounds different than on the 45.
It's fair to say that the story of this particular very important track, which was a million seller, of course, because it was on the B side of Sherry, is incomplete as far as Four Seasons are concerned. And I've put the stereo version, the true stereo version, with the group and Frankie up on YouTube to make sure that people can share it and appreciate it and download it if they wish.
Yeah.
So that was that. The BBC Saturday Club Live is, well, I think, George, you think that's a wonderful experience, don't you?
I was blown away by that, by Ain't That a Shame and The Big Girls Don't Cry. For me, just to hear something that they recorded back in May of '63 when they were out of the country, I just thought it was incredible. Especially Ain't That a Shame, a live performance. It was just great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it just really has a very live feel, as if they were in this radio station studio and they were just asked, well, why don't you give us, a couple of your songs right now?
And Frankie Valli's voice is just, it's right there as if it was off the record. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there was a question in the studio and Frankie said, well, we haven't got our instruments with us. Who's going to do the backing?
Yeah.
It just happened that Mike Berry was there with his group.
Oh, really?
Doing
Okay.
a few songs, and obviously the BBC orchestra is also in the studio for certain tracks. Between them,
Yeah, the songs come to a definite end. It's not like on the 45 where it sort of fades out.
Right.
Yeah. They
Definite
just
end.
cut them off.
The
They-
vocal stopped and then the music stopped.
Right.
It was
Well-
unique. But it was very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
This
Oh.
the Saturday show, the Saturday Club was famous for fans because there was no. You've got to remember the UK didn't have pop radio other than Radio Luxembourg, which was beamed in
Mm,
from Europe. So we didn't get to hear 45s on the BBC very much.
Huh.
wow.
What did they play?
You know, the big
Well, they-
difference between the live performance and the records in those days was Crew would tweak them, and he would come up with these things like the hand claps and so forth that were added to the
Yeah.
45s. But when you saw the group perform, at least when I saw the group perform in 1964, there were the
Oh,
four guys plus a drummer, so they didn't have nearly as much background, and you could clearly hear Valley's one track instead of two track sound coming across clear. And that, I think that was the unique thing about the live performances
Yeah.
back then.
Well, we'll come to that
Wow.
late. We'll come to that a bit later when we come to those
Yeah.
live performances.
I
But
want to hear.
we didn't have the access to 45s other than on foreign radio, really, except on a Sunday radio family favourites show where people could write in and request songs. But those two sessions also were accompanied by on our bonus tracks the unique stereo mix from Golden Hits of Sherry, which is got Frankie in both channels, and it's
Yeah,
not he's double tracked, he's four tracked.
Yeah, you called that a double split or something. It made it sound like an echo in the background.
Yeah, well, I don't particularly like that stereo mix, but I've been sent the album Golden Hits by my friend Paul Airbands in Kentucky a long time ago, and listened to those unique tracks, and I felt they were unique enough to be included where they were specific mixes.
The version in the box set is not like what you hear on the original LP, the Golden Hits LP. This had a different. They were singing, and then in the background you would hear Frankie's voice again, like an echo coming in.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
That was an engineering trick that they used to create those unique mixes. But it was unique enough to be included as a bonus track, and Bob Gudio agreed to it being included. So that was good enough for us. We would have put everything in, of course.
Well, that was different than anything I've heard.
Yeah. There's a couple of other tracks from Golden Hits that we found that have gone in there. The other track that's on the bonus tracks for this is the original version of That's You, which was one of those four demos where the Four Seasons sing in harmony with Frankie. And that really set the seal on what was to come later. And so it's a very important song, and that's the first version, but we have two more to come. Well, obviously, we didn't have any bonus tracks for the Four Seasons Greetings album because that album was put together, we believe, as a live album. You agree, don't you?
Yeah. And according to Charlie Colello, it was recorded with a live orchestra.
Yeah. So if they did it as two tracks or three tracks, that's the only way it could have been done with the orchestra. But the orchestra doesn't sound as though it's been, bounced down. There's one track for the orchestra, and then one track for the backing vocals. But it sounds as though it's just either just two track, and then mixed tomorrow. But the stereo comes out clear as a bell, which means it. The Four Seasons are center, the orchestra are all around them. It's like a live performance, and so I think it was a live recording. It's the first example of the Four Seasons being centered and not separated. as Bob Crew would do on the subsequent albums, because all the stereo albums from then on till 1964 have got the Four Seasons split from Frankie. Frankie's vocal double center. You've noted this, haven't you, Chuck? Frankie's double tracking.
Yeah.
It's on most of the stereo albums. You notice it very clearly.
Very much so.
Superb.
His second singing of the same lyrics,
Yeah.
it doesn't come exactly the same as the first one. So you can tell it's two voices. When you're listening carefully, on a 45 on an AM radio, you never heard it, but you do when you look at the albums.
Can't pick that up on a 45. Yeah.
So,
I think that,
yeah.
I was going to say that Christmas album has really held up over time. I still think it's a great Christmas album.
It is. It is.
There were three great Christmas albums from that era.
I'll go look at it.
There was the
It
Phil
is totally
Spector album.
underappreciated in the marketplace.
Very. Yeah.
There were three great Christmas albums in that period of time. There was the Phil Spector Christmas album, which everybody loved, and it's still played today all the time. And there were the albums by the Beach Boys and the Four Seasons. The Beatles never did a Christmas album, and the Christmas albums by the record companies really didn't get big until the late '60s.
Well,
now everybody has a Christmas album out.
Brenda Lee hit the top of the charts in America this Christmas with "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree," but I don't know whether she did a Christmas album based on that. I've not.
Yeah, I don't know. If I may add though, that the Four Seasons Greetings, their 62-63 Christmas album, for me, that is right up there with the Beach Boys and the Phil Spector album. Again, gets very little recognition, but there are some beautiful cuts on that album that, if you ask me, could have possibly influenced the Beach Boys and that Phil Spector sound. Because as far as I'm concerned, the Four Seasons had that sound a year or two before Phil Spector ever did. And then of course there's a great Elvis Christmas album. That's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyway.
So moving on to Big Girls Don't Cry. The bonus tracks we did obviously pick up another one of those Four Seasons unissued live demo acetate tracks from 1961 from the Tommy DeVito archive, and that is I Am All Alone, which had also actually been produced by Bob Crew on a 45 for Frankie, based on that demo, but a completely different arrangement.
Again, I was going to say, just like Trance, the only thing you really can compare it to is the CD version, the early years one. And again, I thought they did an amazing job getting this, converting it over from a demo acetate.
Well, the engineer did a superb job on salvaging that. I'd salvaged it from the cassette tape and done what I could to boost the volume up on it. But he's done all the cleaning and all the balancing and EQ on it to make it sound as though it just sounds as good as the rest of the tracks to me. And then we followed that with Like You, which was the acetate organ version, which I think you've got a clue as to who was on the organ there, haven't you, Anthony?
Yes, I think it was Bob Gaudio, and the reason I say that is because at the end of the song, he also hums a little bit, and I can recognize his humming.
Good.
You're the expert, Anthony. You're the expert. So, yeah, and I've no idea the source of that. Bill Inglet supplied the acetate transfers. He must have had it on an acetate, but where he got it from and when it was done, we don't know. We suspect it was 1962 sometime. So then we had Connie O in both mono and stereo. The mono was based on the 45 mix that we supplied from our mono archive, and the stereo version was an alternate mix that I had somebody supply me, and I don't know the source of it. I've got a feeling it might have been a digitally extracted stereo where the vocals were extracted and remixed both sides of Frankie.
Yeah, the alternate stereo mix I thought was really beautiful. The voices, everything just stood out so well, and the harmonies were so clear on that alternate stereo mix. as opposed to the mono version, which to me, it just sounded like an a cappella version. They really must have either de-emphasized the music or extracted the vocals.
Yeah, I don't know how the engineer's done that. I didn't have any part in that process. But you know, he made the choices, and I'm not too happy about the way the bonus tracks have been handled on those first two sets of bonus tracks. But the Big Girls Don't Cry unique mono mix, I think, is the unique mono mix, and that was specially done by Bob Crew for the 45, and is listed as distinctly different to the album mix mono.
Yeah, that sounded like the 45 version to me. The one in the box that sounds like the 45 mono
because we took it from a 45 that Stefan dubbed in the studio, and yeah, I think that was sourced. Yeah, that was sourced from me, so it didn't come from Bill England. Moving on to Ain't That a Shame, and the only thing about only two things notable about this album, the way it was put onto disc in the box set, is that the version of New Mexican Rose isn't isn't as good as the original. It might be the original, but the master was actually listed as pulled and used in 1988 for the 25th anniversary CD. It runs 2 minutes 49, and I supplied it from that disc for the engineer to use, but whether he did use it or not. But the other thing is that the stereo album has got 5 tracks on it that is confirmed on the tape boxes as fake stereo, which is a form of stereo created because they haven't got the multi-tracks to mix. Now, why that happened on the original stereo Vee-Jay issue, I do not know, but it surprised me when I saw those notes on the tape boxes. But they can all be turned into real true stereo these days using artificial intelligence and separating the tracks, because you can actually recreate the multi-tracks now. But on this particular box set, that's not been the case. There is a case for saying that the Four Seasons archive should be remixed to a consistent stereo bass, but we'll talk about that again because I've done some work on that myself and put some tracks on YouTube that have had that treatment. So on the bonus tracks for this album, Like You, the trumpet version is on this, and this I think Anthony would possibly agree with me that I think the trumpet player on this version, which I think was arranged by Charlie Colello, is actually Charlie's dad.
Yes, yeah, you know, a good bet. He used his father, Pasquale Patsy, on many of on Big Girls Don't Cry, many of the early Four Season recordings, since he was a trumpet player. So most likely,
but it's a great version, and the second version of the same song. But obviously, the Strangers. Yeah.
I was going to say, which of those three do you like the best? The original That's You, or then the organ version Like You, or the trumpet version Like You? I sort of favor the original That's You because it had the vocal in the background.
I think I favor that for the very same reason. You know, there's a natural vocal empathy in the group that comes across in the recording, and has been captured well by the engineer when he mastered it. So it was great that we managed to get the 3 versions of something that was never released in any shape or form, and we end up with 3 versions of it. So what else could there be out there? As the question comes to mind. But then we have the very strange story and background to 2 tracks that appeared in mono and in stereo, Star Maker and Silver Wings, which don't fit anywhere in the Four Seasons style or arrangements. Even even taking the 4 demos that we had,
Oh,
where do you get an orchestra backing the Four Seasons in a ballady type arrangement like this? It's more like leftover from the Christmas album.
I couldn't believe these when they first appeared on the Golden Hits, and you had Sherry, Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man, Kinder Girl, and then all of a sudden you hear Star Maker and Silver Wings. Like, what happened with
Yeah.
But they're great, aren't they? They sound absolutely pristine, clear,
Yeah.
they are.
absolutely superb sounding, and they're nice melodies and nice arrangements. They're not outstanding, but in terms of Valley's vocal, which is always great when he
Yeah.
uses his vocal, and with good harmony and good orchestration. But this these these are Sid Bass
Yes.
arrangements, aren't they?
Oh,
Which
that's right.
you wonder
Yeah.
whether they
Well,
were.
Vee-Jay did issue them as singles about the time of the Golden Hits album, was after the original contract with the
Well, because
Seasons was gone.
They were
Maybe they were hopeful that it would be hits.
kind of
They threw them out there for effect.
yeah,
Yeah.
little boy.
they were unreleased, and so
I can't believe though that they would have been recorded during the Vee-Jay. They had to be more of a pre-Four Seasons, because they're written by Bob Crew. There's no Charlie Colello signature. There's no, any kind of march clap arrangement. It seemed to me it was more of a like something in 61 or very early 62.
we can't put them into a particular session. And my feeling is that because they have orchestral arrangement, I would speculate that there may be leftovers from the session of the Christmas album, that they were doing the sessions. But where would you have an orchestra with the Four Seasons on any of the previous sessions or any of the sessions that we know of?
Yeah.
There isn't any. So I don't know whether they went in and just did those two songs at Vee-Jay at some stage. But why would they do that after Sherry? You wouldn't expect it.
Yeah,
But anyway, they're there. But then, of course, on the Sherry album, we had the sort of playing around type songs, and Peanuts. Peanuts was done as a unique stereo mix for the Golden Hits album, and and that is a very different mix of the vocals to what we're used to, and so we decided to put that on this because we had the space to put it on, and it went there, and
that was very interesting. This Peanuts had that split effect too, but it was different than the Sherry one. On the Sherry one, the split effect was on Frankie's lead vocal. On Peanuts, the split effect, creating like an echo, was on the background vocals, the Four Season vocals.
Yeah. So this was just the engineers playing around and thinking, what can we do to make it different?
Yeah.
Sell the album. Yeah. So that's what they did. We know that at this time there was a big dispute with Bob Crew and Vee-Jay, and we won't go into that at this particular session. We talked about it before, but by the time we looked at the Live on Stage album for this box set, we knew where the best versions of this were, and they were on the Vee-Jay reels that were used for the sessions and were supplied in 1966. The bonus tracks that we thought we should finish this with were things related to that live album, and so Little Boy in Grown Up Clothes was appropriate because it's on the album and done in live, in stereo, but with audience overdubbing. But we have the mono 45 release on Vee-Jay, and we've been supplied, courtesy of Paul Airbands, a new corrected 45 dub version of it because there's a piano error at the beginning of the session, a beginning of the recording, and that was corrected by an engineer. And so we supplied that corrected version, and that's the one that's gone in. So it is a unique mono 45 version because it is corrected from the original tape, and the original mono tape and stereo tape without audience doesn't exist. So that was quite a big bonus track to include, and I'm sure fans will appreciate that. But the real thing was to capture something of the Four Seasons at the earliest stage of the live recording career, and so I had from a Clearwater, Florida, 1964 recording that somebody had sent me many years ago on cassette, a cleaned up version of "Close Your Eyes" with featured Nick Massey, and I'd put it on YouTube as a tribute to him, and so that was something that I felt should be included here because it seemed to fit with the live on stage recording. I would have thought you guys would agree with that. Fits very well.
Yeah. You said someone sent you the tape?
Yeah, someone sent me the tape a long time ago, and I had it, and it's not the same as the one on YouTube.
Well, the one that's on the in the box set, I compared it to the one on YouTube, and it's exactly the same.
Is it?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's exactly the same as what someone posted that on YouTube about 5 years ago. This Ukrainian royal.
Right.
Yeah, George knows about that. Ukrainian royal. He posts various live performances or different performances.
Because and it was a tape. It was a tape that George Ingram had supplied to me many years ago, maybe more than 2 decades ago, and I had sort of. It's one of the first tracks that I put up on YouTube, and I think it dates. I can't remember what it dates back to, but 2009, 2010. I would have thought it's dated, but you can see it on YouTube.
Fellow said that someone sent him the tape, and he thought it deserved to be posted on YouTube.
Yeah. No, I put it up on YouTube on my Moes Chameleon YouTube channel. Just Close Your Eyes, and I supplied it for that version for this particular box set, and they agreed. Bob Gaudio agreed for it to go in.
It was
wow.
It's very nostalgic for me because the first Four Season concert I saw was in 1964. Supposedly this was from March of 74. So I think I saw them in the summer of 74 in Asbury Park. And
wow.
The set list of that Clearwater was exactly the same set list that they had at the concert I went to, including the Close Your Eyes.
That was in 1964. Where was it?
Yeah, 1960. That was in Asbury Park when I at a convention center in Asbury Park on the Broadwalk, which they played regularly. But that was the first time I saw them, and the same songs that are on that YouTube video was exactly the same songs they sang at that concert, including the Close Your Eyes with Nick.
Yes, the Close Your Eyes, it does come from that. It's the other tracks that we'll come on to later on the next session that don't come from the Clearwater, Florida concert. I think they are either before or after that.
You're thinking about Nick Massey singing "Don't Let Go," I think.
No, I'm not. We'll come to it in another second when we get to the bonus tracks. But the final Vee-Jay associated bonus track that we wanted to include was the version of "I Still Care," which was the classic, unreleased, last of the 4-track acetate demos the Four Seasons had recorded, and I think it's a live demo. And it's the song that obviously Miss Frankie Nolan sang under a Bob Crew production with Frankie doing falsetto in the actual release version. But this is a full-on Four Seasons harmony version, and it's absolutely superb, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of more like the I've Cried Before style, sort of,
Yeah,
ballad, vocal harmony background.
It is, and I'd recommend anybody to listen to that and just glory in the way it should have been done and should have been released. It could have gone on the Sherry album as a track.
Yes, sure.
And actually, he definitely should have done. So that was the Vee-Jay. That was the Vee-Jay bonus tracks. We covered tracks 1 to 4 and discs 1 to 4 and disc 9.
Being a big doo-wop fan, however, I have a soft spot in my heart for the Miss Frankie Nolan version with Frankie's falsetto in the background.
I like it too, but if you want to hear the Four Seasons being the Four Seasons,
yeah.
I perceive the live album was always interesting to me until I really understood how it came about. But it almost seems to me that they were trying to come up with two different acts depending upon where they were playing. They had the rock and roll act, which I saw in March of '64, which was basically the songs from the Vee-Jay albums and Dawn. And they had the songs from the recorded live album, which were for a small club, an Eastern club like the Coco Cabana, which they apparently were trying to rehearse for. So there were still two different acts that they were trying to balance to maximize the value of their live performances versus recording, and I find that to be interesting.
Well, I think they thought they had it made when they were booked for the Coca Cabana.
I mean, that was like the apex of your career if you played at the Copacabana in New York City. So and it was they were playing before an audience of adults. These were not teenagers.
No, I understand that. So they were targeting two different audiences.
They had to cater to the Copacabana audience. They weren't going to go in there and just sing rock and roll songs.
No, they weren't.
I find it interesting that they had that diversity. They could do that.
Yeah. I thought it was.
But you've got to remember, they as the Four Lovers, they were playing all sorts of different clubs and different styles.
Yeah.
They have the experience. They have the experience. It remains totally bizarre.
Yeah. That Copacabana was more
that were left over.
Yeah, they're Four Lovers stage shows.
Rehearsal sessions were dug up by Bob Crew and are used to make money or fulfill a contractual commitment to Vee-Jay, and would come out as a totally and it remains a totally bizarre album to me. I hardly ever listen to it but I love tracks like I Can Dream Can't I, because my dad always used to play the Andrews Sisters version of that, and I grew up with it. So I can listen to Frankie singing that and glory in it, but it remains bizarre to me.
Yeah,
it's unique.
But anyway, that's the story of the bonus tracks as far as the Vee-Jay period was concerned. And next time we'll move on to the start of the Phillips period. So my thanks to George and to
More than welcome.
and to Anthony for helping to make this session interesting and exciting. And I hope it turns people onto the bonus tracks that we put in and explains the reason why they were so important. I tried to put it in the collector's notes, but I think these sessions are important so that people fully understand the background. So thanks to you again, George, for hosting this.
Oh, you're welcome, Ken. Anytime. Thank you.
And next time we'll pick up on the first of the Phillips albums and the bonus tracks from there. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Happy Saturday.
Yes.